What's up, everybody? Joe Brown here. This is Heresy Financial. Today, the Fed minutes came out from their previous meeting, which showed that not only is the Federal Reserve committed to tapering, not only are they committed to raising interest rates following the completion of their taper, but it is also now that some of them are considering that once they've completed stopping purchases, they're going to start selling assets off of their balance sheet, letting their balance sheet decline in the amount of assets that they hold at the same time as they are raising interest rates. So we are going to talk about that. Ready? Let's dive in. Over the last 2 months, the Federal Reserve has added about $100 billion per month to their balance sheet, which is less than the $120 billion they were trying to do for the first 15 months prior to November. And now they are on a track to reduce the pace of their asset purchases so that at the end of March, their balance sheet becomes flat. They're on net not going to be adding any assets to their balance sheet and not going to be selling any. Following that, the plan always was start to raise interest rates after that. They'd be raising rates at the short end of the curve, and the goal would then be to have the rates at the long end of the curve go up more. We know that that's not always how it works, and you can end up with an inverted yield curve if there's any sort of hesitancy about the strength of the economy, because then people will be pricing in the chances of the Federal Reserve lowering rates in the future, so those long-term rates will stay lower, and anytime you get an inverted yield curve, that typically precedes a recession. But we're also now hearing that people at the Fed are considering selling assets off of their balance sheet as soon as they start to raise interest rates. Now, in response to this, the stock market has started to sell off. Gold was having a decent morning. Gold started to sell off. Silver, Bitcoin, everything is selling off. And bonds as well, in response to the anticipation of what the Federal Reserve is planning on doing, which is sending interest rates even higher. I recently made a video about how the economy cannot afford higher interest rates, and everything they are doing seems like they are trying to crash the economy. And here's the biggest point that I want to make here. Do not underestimate how much the Federal Reserve responds to political pressure. The only reason they were able to tighten under the last administration is because the economy was pricing in the tax cuts. So there was wiggle room. There was a buffer zone that the Federal Reserve could tighten into without crushing the economy. But they did it too much. The economy, even still with the tax cuts, couldn't afford that. And at the end of 2019, they finally buckled to political pressure and started to slowly reverse course even more in 2019 when they started not QE, and the rest is history until we're at this point. What is the political pressure the Federal Reserve is feeling right now? 100% inflation. Inflation is out of control. The administration is getting a ton of pressure on the inflation, saying they need to get inflation under control. That is 100% of the pressure that is on the Federal Reserve right now, is ignore employment. You've been focusing on employment, ignoring inflation. Now do the opposite, and markets will respond. It will not stop. The Federal Reserve will not reverse course until the economic pain from the crash that they've caused by tightening becomes so severe that that is worse than the inflation that they were causing before. And so when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The Federal Reserve responds to political pressure, and all of the pressure right now is on getting inflation under control, and that is what they're going to try and do. And it looks like every time they come out, they're being more aggressive about how much they're going to try to respond to inflation. And by the way the market responds, it will not handle it well. And one final note, I know a lot of people think that the Federal Reserve is supposed to be politically independent. That's not what it sounds like. What that means is that they are party independent. So they are not influenced or controlled by one party or another. But they are not politically independent in the way of thinking like, oh, they just do their own thing and ignore what's going on with the government. The fact of the matter is they exist only under the permission and the discretion of Congress. They exist because of the Federal Reserve Act, and that can be amended, changed at any time. The Federal Reserve can be stopped in an instant by Congress if they so choose. They only act according to the mandates given to them by Congress, and the only times they go beyond that are when they believe that they're doing things in the spirit of what Congress wants them to do, even though it circumvents the letter of the law, and they go around it knowing that Congress will probably be okay with it. But the moment they do something that Congress wants to stop, they can be stopped, they can be shut down, they could be folded into the Treasury, anything can happen. So They are not politically independent. They are just party independent. They do everything under the pressure of the government, of the administration. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.